welcome everybody
Welcome
to this week's episode of Comics Corner. I am Casey. This is Christy.
Hi.
Yeah, I got it right. I have been trying to get that for like 2 months now. Anyways,
it's the small things in life, you know? You set manageable goals.
Exactly. You know, you get up and you make your bed every day, and if nothing else goes right, at least you come home to a nicely made bed. Hey, Sith Lord Aisha, how's it going? Good morning, or afternoon. It is afternoon, right?
Good, whatever part of the day and the part of the world that you're at.
Yeah, time has lost all meaning for me, so it's just there. But we got a lot to discuss this week.
So much
DC
news.
has released the floodgates, so we've got so much DC news today. We've got Falcon and Winter Soldier, of course. And then for our This Week in Comics History, we are discussing Captain Marvel, the Marvel version, and Nightwing, aka the first Robin. So we've got a lot. How have you been, Christy? It's been a wee bit crazy lately.
Good. Not a whole lot going on this week, but obviously I've watched all my shows.
Nice.
Yeah. Not doing anything too terribly exciting. How are you?
Nice. I'm hanging. Got my second COVID shot yesterday, and it's killing my arm. But other than that, I'm good. Got one more week, and then I'm like, yes, freedom. I can, do things normally.
That's where I'll be next week. I've got my next COVID shot next Friday, so.
Yeah, from what I've heard, if you didn't have it, the first one is the worst, which the first one wiped me out, and then the second one is not bad. But if you didn't have it, then the second one usually is the worst one, from what I've heard. So, good luck.
Yeah. Thanks. I don't have a whole lot of plans. Like, obviously, we'll record the podcast, and then RSG is supposed to have a ladies' night that I'm supposed to stop by. But other than that, I've got a few days that I can just kind of chill and relax.
That's good.
Hear a grumpy Paul from the Escape podcast. He's going to complain the entire weekend, I'm sure. It'll be great.
Hey.
I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, men are babies when it comes to not feeling well, so.
Yeah.
Not surprising. All right, so we're going to get right into it.
Let's start with the news.
Yeah, so we have a brand new graphic, so check this out.
Nice. I love this.
It's so cheesy, and I was scrolling through graphics, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go with the really, really cheesy one. Why not?
I love it. That is fantastic.
Okay, so as we mentioned, DC released the floodgates after the Snyderverse, and we will get to like the 15 stories that it is.
Yeah.
But
lots of casting news, especially.
Yes, and some potentially problematic casting news. But most importantly, we finally have an official release date for Black Widow. Yes. It is going to be, and we got a new poster too, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It looks really cool. It is going to be July 9th, and it is going to be a day-and-day Disney Plus release.
Yes.
Which I am totally okay with this. I said from the beginning, if they release Black Widow via Premier Access and I had to pay $30 to do it, I would do it.
Yeah.
I am so pumped for this movie.
There's a little bit of controversy surrounding that business model where a lot of people are trying to say like, oh, don't pay the extra money because you're already paying for the platform and then you're paying more for this release. But you know what? Yeah. If I went to the actual movie theater, if I felt comfortable to do that, I would spend more than $30.
Exactly.
So in the case of something where I would absolutely watch it in the movie theaters, if I'm not comfortable being out in public yet, I am absolutely happy to spend that $30 and spend it in the home because that's going to keep the level of movie production that I want to see.
Yeah, and like, I get for families especially, like, this is one of the reasons why when Trolls started all of this, it really worked, even though it was like $20 for 2 days or something like for a rental. It was an insane price. But for most families, that's a whole lot cheaper.
Exactly. I mean, a family goes to the movies and they're spending $100, and that's, you know, with easily. 1 bucket of popcorn.
Yeah. So I'm not opposed to this. The problem is they've done it for films that were kind of So, like, I bought Mulan because a friend of mine wanted to see it. I was not impressed. If it wasn't for that, I would not have bought it. I would have waited the 3 months. They did it recently for Raya, The Last Dragon. I've had friends that have gone and seen it in theaters. They liked it, but it's not doing well on Disney Plus, so they're releasing it to Disney Plus sooner. I don't remember the exact date for that, but it'll be within the next couple of weeks or so. And now with Black Widow, like, this is probably the first film that they've got on their slate that could actually work for this model.
Yeah. I think if it is a blockbuster movie where you have the kind of hype that like the Avengers movies have been providing, this gives people like me an option to still see it right away and have that enjoyment. But yes, releasing it in theaters lets people who are ready to go back out in the public go have that experience. Like, still be safe, but if you want to see it in a theater, go see it in a theater. If you want to spend that same amount of money and see it at home, do it. What I don't think would be right is if they released it for free on Disney Plus and then still released it in the theaters. Then you're just like, people who go see it in the theaters, that's a lot more expensive. That's not the same.
Yeah, I think HBO Max is doing that.
This movie is absolutely a case where, yes, I think it should be more expensive to watch it right now at home.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm totally going to do it. The day that it comes out.
And I can't wait. I will happily spend that $30. Well, actually, I'll make Paul do it, but you know, that's what husbands are for.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a Friday release.
Yeah. It'll be a date night. It'll be great.
It'll be fantastic. And I know that Regal is opening up at the beginning of April, I believe it is, right in time for Godzilla versus Kong, excuse me. Which I'm still debating. Part of me wants to go see it on the big screen, but part of me is like, have movie theaters actually learn their lesson? And am I going to walk into a gross theater like halfway through the day? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, the movie theaters as they were will not work anymore for a number of reasons, but mostly because, public safety and public health. So we'll see. I may watch that on my 4K TV at home, but we'll see.
Yeah.
For this, I mean, depending on, by then, I may do both. I may go see it in theaters, and I may pay the $30 to watch it at home for how much I want. We also got a new release date for Shang-Chi. So Black Widow was supposed to open the first weekend in May. They moved it to July, kind of skipping the July 4th kind of curse date. And that took Shang-Chi's date. And then Shang-Chi is opening September 3rd. So that should be interesting. I think that's a slightly better date for that.
Yeah.
But we'll see kind of what they're going to do kind of going forward. Whether or not this works or not, I don't know. The numbers have been spotty at best for HBO Max. I mean, the Snyder Cut was off the charts in terms of numbers, but Wonder Woman 1984 was kind of in terms of numbers. So we'll see kind of what they're going to do kind of going forward. Godzilla versus Kong will be the first big test for HBO Max of how many people go see it in theaters, how many people stay at home and watch it on the service for no extra cost. And, we'll see. It may work, it may not.
Yeah. I did see one Marvel release where they slipped in an extra movie in October of 2022. So nobody has any word on what that could be. I personally think that it was kind of just somebody created it and used it as a placeholder, because they're only just now saying that Captain Marvel 2 and the Ant-Man Quantum Realm are about to start filming. So they don't have anything that's far enough in production where they could really be releasing it for October, unless there's a massive secret project that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
Or potentially if we had a longer release of something.
Yeah. Well, this is because they'd already moved the schedule around for Black Widow and Loki, because they were supposed to release on the same day and they didn't. So now are they going to push Loki back up to May instead? Like, all of this kind of doesn't, because Falcon and Winter Soldier is supposed to tie into Black Widow, because there's been rumors that one of the characters from Black Widow was filming on the set of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Yeah. So is it going to be another WandaVision where it was supposed to come out at the same time as Doctor Strange 2, and now we're, at least 6 months to a year out from Doctor Strange 2, because they're just now filming.
Yeah.
So they'll probably move Loki up, and then we've got Shang-Chi in September. Apparently, Eternals is coming out on my birthday, so that'll be fun. And then we've got Spider-Man No Way Home in December. They were supposed to release the What If series sometime this year. No idea, no date on that. Same with the Hawkeye one, which I know they've been filming Hawkeye for a while, but I don't expect that any sooner than 2022 at this point.
Yeah. Although you gotta imagine there's less special effects with something like Hawkeye. They might be able to get that through post-production pretty fast.
True. The Miss Marvel series, the Kamala Khan series, was filming. I have heard that they've had some production issues both in front of and behind the camera. So that may be delayed. And I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about the character, and I've not really heard or watched a whole lot from the people that are producing it. So that one I'm gonna wait on a trailer for before I decide about it. And then
I only know bits and pieces because I haven't read that comic series yet, but I am excited for the possibilities. She's a fun character. Yeah. So what I have seen, I've enjoyed. I love the layers of the world, and really that's Marvel's strength, is everything kind of builds on something else. Yeah. And so it makes everything feel much more real and much more like you can have your personal favorite character and kind of deep dive on them somewhere. Whether it's in a film like Iron Man or if it's a TV show like What If. Like, you can have whatever your favorite thing is in Marvel, and there's something made for you.
Yeah. And then, of course, March 25th, 2022, we got Doctor Strange 2, which I'm so excited about. I hope they get it done in time. And then Thor Love and Thunder is the first weekend of May 2022. And then we get kind of iffy as to, like, when stuff is happening. So
they have kind of like maybe loose dates, but a lot of the stuff that you're talking about then they haven't started filming. They're still in pre-production. In some cases, they're talking about stuff that they still haven't had a writer for. So
with
stuff
like
She-Hulk movies, that means that it could be a couple of years or it could be a decade.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's a couple that are up in the air. Like She-Hulk supposedly has a cast. I haven't heard anything else about it. Black Panther 2 is still very much up in the air. What the heck they're going to do with it. There's a couple of ways they could go. Yeah. Comic book basis wise, they could go with Shuri, which is my guess. Or they'll keep her as like, the leader of Wakanda and then bring in M'Baku to take over the role of Black Panther.
There's also been rumors that they'll bring back Killmonger because you didn't actually see him die. And there's comic book support for each of those three scenarios. Personally, what I'd like to see is they focus more on Wakanda and the characters that we already know from there, and don't worry so much about who's taking up Black Panther's mantle. Yeah. Like, it's an important character, but I would rather see it be more about the country and the people and how they're dealing with the loss of their leader, because those actors are dealing with the loss of their friend, like, in real life. And I feel like that would be a very powerful story.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. They have some opportunities to do the non-typical, which has support within the comics. The way they built Shuri, I honestly don't think she would, as her current iteration, I don't think she would want to take on the mantle of king or queen, similar to Thor. It's his birthright, but he doesn't fit. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do. But at the end of the day, I just want them to be true to the characters within the comics. And we'll go from there.
We'll see when it rolls around. We'll have lots to talk about.
Oh yeah, 100%. So DC news, and we've got six different stories that are just massive. So starting with the Snyder Cut, there is and I have not heard of this particular reporting company. It's not Nielsen, but it's Samba TV. From what I've heard, they pull their stats from smart TVs that have the household reporting on. Okay. So these are, I'm sure, only a fraction of the numbers. They're not like indicative of the whole thing, but they pulled the stats for both Wonder Woman and for the Snyder Cut, and Wonder Woman had 2.2 million over Christmas Day weekend. The Snyder Cut had 1.8 over the same 3-day weekend, basically. So that'll be interesting. And they only had like 3 very specific markets. So they pulled from like San Francisco, Sacramento, and LA. So that makes me think they're a California-based company, which is fine. But it's only again a fraction of the numbers. But I think it's indicative of kind of where the numbers were. And HBO Max will never release the how many got downloaded, what the new subscriber rate was, and all of that. So far the numbers have been good. I mean, as good as we can get. So it'll be interesting kind of to see going forward what the numbers are as they get released. I know that recently, the other day, the hashtag Restore the Snyderverse was trending on Twitter for 24 hours, and it had something like 1.4 million tweets in 24 hours, which broke the Endgame like tweeting record. And I'm not sure if it was a troll or support, but I know the Russo brothers came out and said that they would consider releasing a 6-hour director's cut of Endgame, and I'm like, yes, please. 100%. Give me more Black Widow.
I would watch every single minute of it. I don't care if it's 30 seconds new content to me. I would watch it all. I'd be fine with that.
Honestly, like, I just want a series of Cap returning the stones.
That would be nice. Send pics of toothbrush and toothpaste. Oh, sorry, Paul. I'm already recording. Paul from the Escape Podcast has very helpfully reminded me that I did not tell him what kind of toothpaste I use. Well, and after 12 years of marriage, he has still never noticed.
Well, you know what they say.
Yeah. No, what I would love from the Marvel universe, if they were going to release Infinity War or Endgame, I would want just something that, like, a 20-second tie in between the last moment of Infinity War and the first moment of Endgame, and then just release the whole thing all together.
Yeah.
And I would be 1,000,000% fine with that. That would be great.
I mean, honestly, yeah, same. I know fans have done like supercuts, so I know that there's a 4-hour supercut of Revenge of the Sith with the corresponding Clone Wars episodes. I would totally be fine with any of that. It would be interesting. So we'll start with kind of the smaller flash news or the smaller news and then go up from there because we've got a lot of headlines. So the Flash movie is currently filming. I'm going to say his name wrong, but Billy Crudup, who played Henry Allen in the Snyder Cut, because of his commitment to other shows that are already in production and COVID, there was just no way to safely have him travel between the two sets. So he has been replaced by Ron Livingston, who looks really familiar, but for the life of me, I don't know where I know him from.
Office Space. He was the lead of an Office Space.
That would do it.
I think he was on like a 90s TV show too. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I feel like it would be something weird that I would know him from.
Like, I feel like he was an early edition, but I might be making that up. Let's look.
Let's see.
Office Space. Yep, that is right.
Boardwalk Empire. That's where I know him from.
He was Berger in Sex and the City, one of Carrie's boyfriends. A few episodes of The Practice.
Oh, he was in Band of Brothers. That's where I know him from.
Yeah, I definitely know him mainly from Office Space, which I will watch 1,000,000 times in a row, happily.
Oh, Office Space is a fantastic movie. There was a total remind me, I have a Spaceball story to tell you later. So yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm curious kind of what they're going to do with Flashpoint going forward. So that'll be fun. To the CW small screen news, we have a casting announcement for Black Mass for the Batwoman show. It is going to be Peter Outerbridge, who looks really familiar, but I don't think I've ever seen anything he's in. He reminds me of Richard Grant, which is who I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure. But I'll admit, I don't know a whole lot about Black Mask as a character, but that should be interesting.
He was actually just played by Ewan McGregor in the Birds of Prey movie. So people who have watched Birds of Prey will be a little bit more familiar with the character.
Yeah. That'll be fun. So that could be interesting going forward. We'll see, honestly, what they they do.
When we talk about recaps, I will talk about the last episode of Batwoman. It is going to a place that I think everybody should be a little happier with.
Good. Thursday we got this poster for for Suicide Squad, which I have to admit reminds me of a very colorful version of a World War II propaganda poster. It's interesting. It's very old school, but I feel like there's too many characters, which means someone's going to die, I'm sure. And then, of course, yesterday we got the first trailer, which, as I was watching it, I was enjoying it the first time. I rewatched it a second time, and they leaned a little too heavy on the banter. And I'm getting very, very strong Guardians of the Galaxy vibes, which I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Because, I want them to stand on their own. I don't want them to be the same,
Yeah.
And there was this weird moment with John Cena's Peacemaker. And I was just like...
The beach?
What? Yeah, the beach scene. And I'm like, but why?
Honestly, I think what they're trying to do is the first Justice League movie took it too seriously.
Yeah.
And it was not successful at being a serious action-y movie.
Yeah.
And some of the best moments of that were inadvertently funny.
Yes.
So I feel like they're trying to go in the other direction, and they're like, okay, well, we'll just make it silly, campy, fun.
Yep.
And we have a lot of really weird characters, and let's just let them be weird and fun. And, you know, they have some really very good comedic actors in the movie. I didn't even know Pete Davidson from SNL was in it until I saw him crop up, and I was like, what the... But all of the scenes that in the trailer that he's in, he has something stuck to his shoe. Yeah. So okay. But I think that they're going to try to go for a completely different aesthetic because they know that the first Suicide Squad movie was not successful. And I think the only way that they can justify making another one is to go in a 180-degree direction, try for silly and funny, and see if maybe that's their magic recipe. So yeah, it does feel a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy because it's going to be superhero-y, but mostly funny and kind of like bright and colorful. But I'm okay with that because Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite part of the MCU anyway. I love those movies.
True. Yeah, I like the first one. For me, the second one, the soundtrack really let me down.
Yeah. Well, the first one was unexpectedly fantastic.
Yeah, and then so I was rewatching Infinity War and Endgame the other day, and when they brought them in with the Rubber Band Man, I was like, that is like just the perfect song choice for them. Like, so it really is. Well, that, and I didn't really like Ego. Even though I love Kurt Russell. But the second one just didn't work as a film for me, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
it felt a little off.
The whole thing with him having powers and then immediately giving them up to defeat the Planet Dad. Like there was just something where it didn't feel as rewarding of a payoff. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'm curious kind of what they do. I will say this is by far the best version of Harley Quinn we have seen on film. That is not the animated series, because the animated series is fabulous.
Well, the animated series created the character. She was in that animated series before she ever appeared in comics.
Yeah. So we'll see. I really do like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, but I think it's a case very much of she needs to be under the right director with the right writing, and do it that way. So we'll see what they have going forward. It could be interesting. I will definitely see it regardless, because I saw Suicide Squad, the original, because I was like, there's no way it's as bad as everyone says it is. Oh boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
But I digress. Maybe eventually, we'll get the proper Ayer cut one day. But big Shazam news. So Helen Mirren has closed the deal to play the villain Hesperia, who is a daughter of Atlas. So they're bringing in more of Greek mythology, which I love.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces of DC comics.
It's a chance for them to, play with established characters, but also create new characters. So that'll be fun. Of course, it is titled Fury of the Gods. So that'll be interesting. Haven't heard when they're going to start filming, but it's probably going to be soon. And then, of course, David Sandberg is directing it. So that'll be fun. I hope that they don't do another Christmas movie that they release in April. But, that
was weird.
It was weird. It was very weird. And at the end of the day, we shall see. It's a big get for them. That's a big name.
She's just a fantastic I
yeah.
love her.
Like, honestly, and she's played weird, silly stuff before. Like, if you've ever seen the Red movies, she is phenomenally
I love
great
her.
in those.
Oh,
I love those movies so much. I might actually rewatch that after I rewatch Captain Marvel later.
Yeah. Red is fun.
Oh, they're so good. Like, that whole, like, I want to get to that point in my life where I don't care what anybody thinks and I'm just going to do what's fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. So yeah, that's a big name for a film that, as much as I love Zachary Levi, he is not a big name star. So
yeah, he's quirky and fun, but he's not an A-list or headline-y kind of name all the time.
No. And, you know, he is phenomenal. I have loved him since Chuck and watched everything he has done since then. If you haven't seen Chuck, I highly recommend it. It is a funny, geeky,
it's spy but funny.
It has so many pop culture references. I'm pretty sure it's on Amazon Prime. I think it is.
Yeah, I've rewatched it a couple of times.
Solid stuff. Trying to get them to do a movie. Like, the cast wants to do a movie, but Warner Brothers, like, come on, HBO Max. It's a thing. But I digress. So yeah, that'll be fun. Highly looking forward to that. So the biggest piece of news that came out of it was Black Adam. So they got Pierce Brosnan to play Dr. Fate. Now, I will say, this is perfect casting as far as comics book accurate, but as far as I'm aware, the character is of kind of the character that he turns into is not, he's like of Middle Eastern descent, I believe, if I'm not wrong.
Well, there's a lot of different versions.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
I don't know that they said which version of Dr. Fate he's going to play. There are some that are.
Yeah.
I know what you're referring to. There some of the more recent Dr. Fates are definitely Middle Eastern.
Yeah, and you know, if they had to recast Hawkman and they had to recast Moon Knight, I can't see this being okay going forward. Not that I have a problem with it. I think it's a fantastic casting. And in fact, I watched a couple of videos covering this, and they were like, this is perfect as far as comic books go. But somebody, I'm sure, will have an issue with it at some point.
Yeah, it really depends on the version. There are some versions where a British actor can play that perfectly acceptably. It's where you take somebody who in the comics is Middle Eastern and then play it with a white actor. That's whitewashing.
Yeah.
But comics have a lot of characters who share the same name and the same powers and things like that. That's
It can get problematic, but hopefully, you know, they find a way to keep you're not going to keep everybody happy, but at least, you know, you can hopefully sidestep any landmines that'll probably happen. But yeah, that is the news. My God, there was a lot of it.
Lots of news.
So much. Like, the cynic in me was like, this seems oddly convenient that they're releasing all of this to bury the Snyder Cut.
Sorry, I was looking it up at the same time. He's playing the Kent Nelson version of Dr. Fate. Okay. So that eliminates that worry of yours.
Oh, good. Because I've heard I had heard it on several bigger comic book sites that people were already talking about that, and I'm like, ooh, no, let's not stir the pot if we don't have to. Yeah. Because, you know, somebody somewhere is going to find an issue with everything. It's just how the world works nowadays, unfortunately. But a lot of casting news, a lot of exciting stuff. I'm doubtful that they didn't release all of it, that they gave the Snyder Cut some room to breathe. So we'll see kind of if going forward. I think eventually, especially if the numbers are really good, there will be a Snyderverse on HBO Max, which is kind of the perfect vehicle for it. You know, these streaming miniseries that are 6-7 hours long are kind of perfect.
Yeah.
As far as storytelling goes. So we shall see. But we will head over to our This Week's in Comics History, and we will see you after the break.
And now, for This Week in Comics History.
And we're back. So, this week.
Good break.
I should make them longer, but, you know, I don't have full 30-minute.
It just cracks me up that you called it a break. That's the part I'm laughing at.
Well, I mean, it is technically, a
5-second break.
I am working on commercials. They are coming. Learning 2D character animation is taking me longer than I anticipated.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. Anyways, so as you can see by our photos, our This Week in Comics History is Captain Marvel and Nightwing.
And that looks fantastic. That looks really good.
Yeah, I'm slit. The Captain Marvel one, man, I pulled it from Endgame and it just was perfectly sized. And I was like, oh yes, I'm getting better about, and I didn't notice till after I'd pulled them because I pulled these photos at 3 a.m. when I was sleepy and way out of it. But the color schemes are almost exactly the same.
It looks like you did it on purpose.
I didn't. I really didn't. Okay, so we shall start with Captain Marvel because
I had a feeling you would.
I know a bit more about Captain Marvel than I do Nightwing. Mm-hmm. It's been a long time since I've watched the Batman animated series, and I have not watched it recently, so my memory of him is slightly weak. Yeah. And we were talking about the Carol Danvers version of Captain Marvel at the moment, or Miss Marvel as she's sometimes known in the comics. She first appeared in
March 1968.
60. Yeah, in Marvel Superhero 13. It was all blending in my notes. And interestingly, she first appeared as a Air Force intelligence officer, not as an actual superhero. And it wasn't until a couple of issues later when she had the accident where she she merged with Captain Marvel and became Captain Marvel.
And I think that might have been the series January 1977.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
She was a character within the universe as a normal human being for almost a decade. A while.
Yeah. She appeared first in the Silver Age. And then, of course, that was when Marvel was doing the series of self-titled runs, which some of them were good, some of them were not so good. Captain Marvel has had some problematic storylines. There is one of her on the moon that is often titled The Rape of Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
It's
some dark issues.
She has a problematic history within comics, which is a shame because it is a really good character. And we've seen a couple of iterations in the comics. Currently, Miss Marvel is being helmed by Kamala Khan. And they were smart to stick with the Captain Marvel version in the MCU. She is often with the Avengers, A-Force, Kree, or Alpha Flight. She has a bunch of different... She crosses the Marvel Comics universe so much. She's been in Avengers runs. She's been in X-Men runs. She's also been known as Binary and Warbird. And is often considered the most powerful within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Within Marvel Comics. You could make a claim that the way that they're doing Scarlet Witch in the MCU is kind of putting them on equal footing
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see
they're kind
where
of
that
overpowering everybody in the MCU. So I'm actually fine with that because they're also overpowering the villains.
Yes, exactly.
So they want a spectacle, and I can get that. With this, the Captain Marvel movie was a hit and a miss for some people.
Yeah.
Depending on how you enjoy the character, if you knew about her at all. I think that people who read the comic books and really know the character really well, it was a bit of a miss because they kind of adapted the storyline to fit a movie better.
Yeah.
Because she has so much back history.
Well, and her stuff is all over the place.
It really is. She's a lot of different characters, a lot of different costumes, different versions of powers. So they kind of abbreviated everything to make it a cohesive movie.
Yeah.
And I think the less you knew about her actual character, the more you could enjoy the film. Yeah. But I see why they did it that way. And I'm excited for the Captain Marvel movie 2 to see where they kind of fill in some of those gaps. If they go with more of her understanding her history and learning about her powers, because she kind of went from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
With not knowing that she had powers at all, to remembering her past and the fact that she's not really Kree, and like there was a lot of confusion there. But honestly, one of the things that I always forgot about is that she had such an impact on the X-Men mutant Rogue that's why Rogue can fly and has super strength, and like that's one of the things that I went back and rewatched because Rogue is my favorite X-Men character, and I just kind of forget about some of the details of her past.
Yeah.
And so that was a fun tie-in for me. I was like, oh yeah, that's why she can fly. I don't tend to think about it.
Yeah, I was doing a show prep on Thursday, and I was listening to a couple of podcasts specifically diving into the Miss Marvel stuff, and it was like it was so all over the place all the time. Like she really was, as a character, a victim of the fact that it was the 70s and the 80s in comics, and they were problematic at best for a lot of that time. And I think they tried to overcorrect with the movie, which I get. I do. So I'm curious to see where they're going to go with Captain Marvel 2. They've kind of laid some interesting groundwork in WandaVision for, the strained relationship between her and Monica, which I want to know what that's all about. And whether or not it's if she ever came back to Earth in that time frame between Captain Marvel and Infinity War. Yeah. If she didn't, I can understand why there's some issues between her and Monica.
And we've got the whole Skrull storyline that I can just expect that we're going to get into more of that before we hit Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's actually one of the things about this character is they use her to do so many things, That's why she has like 7 different personas. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 5.
There's a lot.
She has 4 different comic book iterations where she has superpowers and a name and a costume, and they're all pretty different from each other. Yeah. And it feels like sometimes they were looking for a way to tell a story, and they were like, okay, well, let's just take Ms. Marvel and make her this thing. Yeah. So that gives you both some limitations when you're trying to tell a story today and trying to do a movie, because you've really got to choose your path. And the movies can't be as weird and all over the place as the comic books have been. So you really kind of have to pick a lane and hope that it works out.
Yeah. Well, and, Kevin Feige's, mission statement is keep it to the comics and keep it simple, which we will get into more with Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
But moving over to Nightwing. So Nightwing, he first appeared in Detective Comics number 38 at the beginning of April in 1940. I thought it was March, so that's why we're doing it this week, but that's okay.
Yeah, good. It's good fun.
Yeah.
So we're talking the Dick Grayson version of Nightwing, correct?
Yes. So he originally appeared as Robin, and then was as Robin for forever.
Mm-hmm. And then most would say, like, if you're thinking of Robin, most of the time that's who you're thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. And then in Tales of Teen Titan number 44 in July of 1984, he retires as Robin and assumes the persona Nightwing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, he had a family history of being a circus acrobat, and then gets adopted by Bruce Wayne, and trains him into being Robin and stuff. And there's a great comic, and I forget which one it is off the top of my head, where his graduation, he had to be able to graduate to go into the streets. He had to elude Batman for an entire night, and it was like, okay, cool, but that's such a Batman thing to do.
It really is. When in doubt, you can just say it's kind of the Batman thing to do, and that answers a lot of questions.
It really does. But yeah, he's played in a lot of different teams over the years. He has a lot of his own runs. He's kind of been all over the place a little bit. I think he was, I know he was in the Batman animated series as Nightwing, I believe. So he's had an interesting kind of history throughout the comics, as far as, different storylines and different teams ups and stuff. And it's a character that's been around for forever. And with the
I know him mostly from
cool
Batman related video games. His Nightwing is usually a character that you can play. And to be specific, Paul and I, my husband, the Escape Podcast, if you're in Twitch chat, we tend to play all of the Lego games together. That gives us a lot of joy. And in the Batman Lego games, the girls can always jump higher. I don't know why that is, but it is. They tend to be acrobatic, whatever. Nightwing is one of the characters that can jump like the girls, and it makes me happy. But one of the things I was thinking about when we started talking about Nightwing is my cheesy favorite movies of Batman Forever and Batman Robin.
Oh yeah,
they're so bad, but I love them. But Chris O'Donnell plays his version of Robin much more like Nightwing.
Yeah.
It's heavy on the circus background. It's heavy on the acrobatic skills, and less the little kid sidekick.
Yeah.
So if you don't know Nightwing and you kind of want to get into knowing about the character, that's actually not a bad place to start. Because nominally he is Robin, but he is also Dick Grayson of the Flying Graysons, and the kind of personality traits and the action that he does in those movies is very much Nightwing. Yeah. He plays him as a young adult and has the acrobatic skills and all of those kinds of traits.
Yeah, and he's a bit persona non grata at the moment, but the Jeff Johns version of Nightwing is actually very, very good, specifically within the Teen Titans. And I put in our Discord server some recommended reading. He's a weird character, but he's a lot of fun, and I suspect when they were talking in the Snyder Cut, when Joker and him were talking about the son that died, my suspicion is that it's the Dick Grayson version of Robin, which I hope that becomes the case, because I want the detective version of Batman. It is my favorite version of the character.
Yeah.
So we'll see going forward what they do.
Maz Kanata just said, "Oh no, what happened?"
I don't know. What happened?
I don't know. Was it the Batman died reference you just made? Because Batman does a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was just you. I'm watching our Twitch feed and we're fine. I think you had some internet problems, Maz Kanata. But thanks for asking. It's always safer to check.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on our stats, and we're okay on my end. So,
Paul from the Escape Podcast says it's just you. And look, Paul from the Escape Podcast, I'm using your name in the audio because I listen sometimes, not very often.
Sometimes. I mean, hey, it's okay. All right, so we're going to flip on over to.
Are we getting the recaps?
Yeah, we're getting into recaps. So,
do you want me to do the CW recaps quickly, and then
yes,
we can
please.
talk longer about? Okay.
Accidentally, nope. Stop doing that. Stupid Discord.
Okay, so we will do Batwoman first because that's what I watched first this week. So we are kind of wrapping up the whole Mystery Island sort of situation. Everybody just gets to the island. Batwoman gets there, Alice gets there, Ocean gets brought there, but also Jacob Kane, who's leader of the Crows, which I still don't understand why the Crows have so much authority, because they're like a private security firm, but we treat them like the cops. I still don't really get that, but that's okay. It's fine. He and his right-hand woman, Sophie, all get there at the same time. Everybody gets to the island together. And Batwoman, Ryan, has a moment with Alice where she's like, you don't really want to kill your sister, right? And so Alice has this epiphany that further makes me think she's doing the anti-hero turn, where she's trying to shake off her mental, she's been kind of brainwashed into becoming the person that she is. So we're really kind of seeing that. And it turns out Kate was never on the island, because of course Kate was never on the island.
Of course not.
Yeah. So the bad guy, Sophia, she is an actual character from the comics. But she's always been kind of more of a pirate queen. And I feel like this version of her, they tried to make her more of a mystical, leader of people. So much more of a Ra's al Ghul.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
I get that, because with this version of Batwoman, they're really trying to make everybody a powerhouse woman. Let's have women villains, let's have women heroes, women sidekicks. I get that. But for the version of that, I am ready for it to be done. I love the strength of Batwoman is always getting into the rogues gallery. And so the fact that we're kind of wrapping up this storyline and leaving the island behind, I want to see more villains. I want to see a villain of the week kind of situation. And I'm really hoping that that's where we're going with the casting news, where they said Black Mask is going to show up. I want to have something new happen each week. And the very last moment of the episode, we see a pawn shop or a jewelry shop in Gotham. And then they kind of pan down to the sewers, and you see a person who's all bandaged up and scarred and hideous figure, and it's wearing Kate's necklace. So we have discovered that Kate Kane is back in Gotham. She's injured, she's hiding, and she has been recast. So that is how they've decided to deal with Ruby Rose leaving the show. They did say flat out that they weren't going to kill the character. And so this whole, is she dead, is she not thing was very frustrating, because you have, outside of the world, that she's not coming back, and that she's not dead. But the characters in the show were obsessing over it. So it's been a frustrating few episodes.
I can imagine.
So I do know from, outside sources that we're going to get into questions of, she tries to find her place in Gotham. So we know that Ryan is not going to be giving up the mantle of Batwoman. I hope that means that we're going to get a lot more into seeing something different, letting her grow and be her own version of Batwoman. I'm excited to see where that's going to go. So if you have not watched Batwoman, skip everything before this. Just start with whatever comes out next week. Try starting from there because it's all going to be pointless.
Gotcha.
And skipping ahead, what did I watch next? I think it was Flash. Okay, Flash. This episode is called Central City Strong. And I like that because it's a lot of what like real life cities have been doing when something massively disastrous happens. Like after the hurricane, we did Houston Strong, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it starts off with them trying to rebuild the city and everybody's volunteering and it's also adorable. And then it gets into a lot of like going to meetings. Iris especially is dealing with some trauma from being stuck in the Mirrorverse. And so it gets into a lot more of like, you know, get support, get help, talk your feelings out. But then they also have a few interesting, like Abracadabra shows up, who has been in The Flash before. And he's dealing with trauma, but not from this recent event. He's dealing from it based on Crisis, which was, you know, a whole season ago. So it's definitely one of those episodes where I kept feeling like if I was watching this live on the CW, they'd have one of those commercials that was like, if you need help, here's a 1-800 number you can call.
Yeah.
I watched it on the app the next day, so I'm not certain that they didn't do that. But it felt like one of those episodes. It was an episode that you could enjoy if you haven't watched any other Flash episodes. I mean, it was just kind of like everybody had like their little superhero moments, but still it was more about the people actually being real people.
Gotcha.
We did have a couple of really interesting moments, one of which was like I talked last week about, I think that more speedsters were going to show up because different colors of lightning went off. And I think I was wrong. We had a monster show up that was massively... Thank you, Paul. This is on a very special episode of Flash. This monster showed up that was massively strong and couldn't be beat, and actually like ate an antimatter bomb without any ill effects. Like it was crazy. And so I did a little research, and it is a monster of the Strength Force. So now what I think happened was these 4 lightnings coming out of them restarting the Speed Force, I think gave birth to these other forces, which now I've been doing research on. And I hadn't known from the comics, but there's like Strength Force, which makes you super strong, and Sage Force, which makes you super intelligent. And there were like 3 others. So it's really interesting. I think that that's where they're going to go with this. That
makes sense.
For a while, they're going to defeat really strong monsters, and then they're going to defeat really intelligent people, and they're going to realize that they didn't just restart the Speed Force, but now there are all these other forces in the universe. So I'm excited to see that. And then the spoiler is that the very last moment, one of the characters, Caitlin Frost, has a dual personality. That Caitlin Snow is her real name, and she becomes Killer Frost, which has cryogenic powers. And Killer Frost has been a part of her whole life, like saving her life, helping her heal. And over the last like season, she's been letting Killer Frost go out and like live a life and be a real person. Yeah. And they walk out and they are now 2 separate people. So something happened with the mirror, like she was hit with mirror powers. I think what that did was split her 2 personalities into 2 human beings. And so there's going to be a lot of fun, like double trouble kind of shenanigans that they'll get up to with that. The Flash is always good at shenanigans. So I'm excited to see the next episode.
Yeah, surprisingly so.
Yeah, that's always been kind of more the lighthearted show. And then like DC Legends of Tomorrow is more of like campy, silly fun.
Yep.
So those are my favorite out of the Arrowverse. And then Smallville.
I mean, basically.
Superman and Lois. The episode is called The Best of Smallville. And that, just like you mentioned with a weird Christmas movie being released not at Christmas, that is exactly what happened here. It was a harvest festival. And I'm like, isn't it March?
Yeah. Was this supposed to be released in the fall?
Did I fall asleep for 6 months? I don't understand. But they have a harvest festival and they're harvesting wheat. And I'm like, okay, I guess COVID. Because that's always the answer. It's either because Batman or because COVID. Now.
COVID, yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of kind of like backstory. It was a lot of Clark as a teenager and him relating that to his teenage boys. We had some teenage drinking. We had a teenage breakup and a teenage first date, and it was all teenage kind of angst.
Fun.
We also got into the fact that our big bad guy we have two big bad guys for the episode. One is Captain Luthor, who we still don't know a lot about, but we think he came from another world. And he pretends to be a reporter. And then later we find out that in his world, he was married to Lois Lane. So now they've got like the whole, he's in love with Lois because she's just like his Lois.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, because why not? And then we've also got the big bad guy of Morgan Edge, who is a super rich businessman that Lois is trying to fight against. And we figured out at the end of last episode that his assistant has superpowers. She has super strength and also heat vision. And in this episode, we find out that this guy who just mysteriously appeared from the past, he's been missing for a few months and he just shows back up. He's got heat vision. And like later in the episode, he can fly. So he's obviously got like Superman powers. And so they're getting into a lot of, it feels like Morgan Edge is trying to create a Superman army where he's been like experimenting on people, and maybe that's why they've been going missing because they kind of get into that. And it looks like the special effects that they're doing are very similar to Iron Man 3 when they were doing the extremis tests.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you kind of picture that, except for instead of just regrowing limbs, they're also becoming miniature Superman, you'll get a good vibe of how this episode was going.
Gotcha.
So basically,
I have, like, all
cross
these
Iron Man 3
recorded.
with like Dawson's Creek, and that was this episode of Superman and Lois.
I have them all recorded. I need to sit down and actually watch all of them.
Yeah, it was weird. And then they had just a moment at the end where Jordan gets like attacked by the other kid from the football team who was starting to like vibrate and have powers. And so that's also very Smallville, where normal teenage kids were exposed somehow to kryptonite and they started gaining superpowers in weird ways. And so I feel like they're going to do a lot of similar things with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Kind of when I was watching the trailer, I got very much Small vibes, like, you know, the grown-up version of Smallville, basically.
Yeah.
Which I'm not opposed to. I mean, I love the show. And like, you know, we've had this happen with other shows like Boy Meets World, now there's Girl Meets World, and like sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this going forward.
It's definitely like, I expected this to be a Superman show, but Superman has a family, and it is definitely a lot less Superman than it is anybody else around Superman.
Interesting.
So they seem to be focusing a lot on how the teenagers are teenagers and how Lois is a reporter. And Superman happens to be there. So the fact that he technically has top billing feels very weird.
Yeah, well, and also I'm sure from a VFX standpoint, it's a whole lot cheaper.
Yeah. That does make sense. So yeah, that was the CW this week. the 3 shows that I watched. I still haven't started on Black Lightning. I kind of want to wait for Black Lightning to just finish. I know they're on their last season, and I feel like it's going to take me so long to catch up. It's going to be over by the time I get there.
That happens.
I'm going to get to them.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
So that's the CW. Let's get to Disney.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. So,
And I'm wearing my Murica shirt just for the occasion. I picked it out on purpose.
Nice. I like it. So we've got 2 episodes to go over. First one is kind of we drop right into Falcon and Bucky as their lives are at post-blip, post-endgame, all of that fun stuff. And Falcon goes back to what he knows, which is working with the Air Force and running ops as Falcon, not as Captain America, and ends up giving up the shield to basically put on display.
I think that his first battle is probably it happened within the first 8 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best use of Falcon that we've ever seen.
Yes,
it was the perfect setup of bad guys. It was a great action sequence, and it made me very excited for what this series could be.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they brought back Baltrock from Winter Soldier. So that was fantastic. And at the time when he gave up the shield, I was thinking, oh, that's not going to stay in the Smithsonian. Because it's the government, they're always going to be, this is why the Hulk exists. They've been experimenting with super soldier stuff since Cap.
Yeah. They've always been trying to replicate Cap.
Exactly. But I also understand, and I thought about this after I watched both episodes, about, him struggling with the legacy that is Cap. And, while Cap may think he's the right man for the job, that your own kind of self-doubt of, am I actually really good enough?
Yeah. And this series is definitely exploring that, because you have, on one hand, Cap sees all of the good in Sam and sees that he can do it and believes that he's worthy to do it. But Sam's also coming from a very different perspective where he sees the world in a very different way.
Yes.
And that's something that Cap is not ever going to understand. I mean, Sam is a modern man. Cap, in a lot of ways, was still stuck in his 40s persona.
Yeah.
And Cap is a white man who grew up in the 40s, where Sam is probably maybe 90s, maybe 2000s. Yeah. I'm not sure how old he's supposed to be. But he grew up as a black man, and that's a very different perspective. And this show is not shying away from that in any way.
Oh, no. And I was, and we talked about this extensively, actually, after the first episode, I was very concerned that they were going to push it to the point where you turned off people that you were actually trying to talk to. Because not everybody wants to have stuff shoved in their face. And Hollywood is very much left-leaning, and not everybody is. And I didn't want them to cut their nose off to spite their face. And after the second episode, it seems like they were so far at least, but able to walk that very fine line.
I think what you're mentioning here is also the same thing that Captain Marvel experienced, where it was a very... there are some people who took it as kind of a feminist attack vehicle when they were trying to make a very strong, very pro-woman, feminist female character, because in the comics, she has been a feminist female character. So they were trying something, and a lot of people were like, oh, she hates men, I don't want to watch this, and just kind of turned it off, attacked it. Things like that. So now you're having somebody who in the comics has been I'm a black man and this has been my experience. You're getting that in this show, but you're you were concerned that there might be some people who would be like, oh, well, I don't want it because it's going to be too much of this.
Well, yeah, and especially with everything, and I know this was filmed before everything that happened in the last couple of months, but tensions have been very high. And, you know, I didn't want them to preach to people that only were there to watch superheroes, you know?
Yeah.
Because not everybody wants to have a secondary message to everything. And apologies for the weird ad that decided to play on my computer. I don't know what the heck happened. So I'm gonna try and clean that up in post, hopefully. But yeah, I didn't want them to just push it to the nth degree to make a point. And they did this very well in the second episode. With the interaction between Bucky and Falcon. And, you know, they were arguing. They were two men arguing in a very sketchy neighborhood in Baltimore, which already does not have the best track record for anything, let alone, you know, properly policing. And, you know, the cops stop him to talk and be like, well, what the heck's going on? And, you know, there's two ways to read that scene. You can read it immediately. Well, they stopped because they were arguing, or they stopped because it was a black man and a white man arguing. And, you know, the fact is they're both dangerous looking guys, you know, having a very heated discussion. And, you know, it was interesting that they played with they left because they were Avengers type thing. And the reality is they probably wouldn't have. But, you know, we'll see kind of where they go with it going forward. I did do some research into the U.S. agent storyline, which, oh boy, are they literally following it to a T.
Oh, very closely.
I was actually really surprised how closely they were following it. And I like the fact that he's a little unhinged.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So to kind of recap that first episode, we have some good action.
Yeah.
Some great usage of Falcon and his abilities. We have got like bad guys paragliding away with those weird little suits, which I think is the best way that you could give him bad guys to fight against. You know, it's not like he has a lot of like fighting against choppers and fighting against these guys in suits, but it's the best use of his abilities that I've seen in film so far. Because usually he flies a couple of things. He swoops around and comes up from the other side and he shoots guns. And this was much more of like a chase scene. And I really enjoyed that. And then you've got him talking to his Air Force buddy. And they start talking about the Flag Smashers as being kind of a terrorist organization that cropped up during the blip. And this is based on an actual character from the comics called Flag Smasher. And that was his goal, was to make the whole world one place without borders. So the fact that they're doing that, I think that's a way that this show can be political without being political. Like they're talking about some of those issues in a way that makes it feel much more across the board and comic booky. And it's also something that feels like it could really happen in this universe. Like they're doing things in a very interesting way.
I like that they went with the geopolitical aspect of it.
Yeah.
That really works. And it makes sense that, you know, they would contract out. And then we switch to him going home and trying to get a I'll get to Enfys Nest
Paul
in a
from
sec.
the Escape Podcast is telling us that Enfys Nest showed up in episode 2, and we'll get there. We're still talking episode 1, Paul from the Escape Podcast.
I got slightly distracted and went off on a tangent.
I can't talk to you right now about episode 2 if we're still talking. We're like 10 minutes into episode 1 here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we get Bucky in his therapy sessions, which I found it interesting that he's not technically on parole, but he kind of is, like, if he doesn't go to therapy.
Yeah.
Which I find fascinating. But also I like that he's making amends. Mm-hmm. And, he's
trying to figure out who he is post the conditioning that he's been in. Yeah. He's going to therapy, and his therapist is definitely a soldier. Definitely a soldier in her own right. And she has 3 rules for him. And the rules are: you can't do anything illegal, you can't hurt anyone, and that you have to say at the end that his name is James Bucky Barnes and he is no longer the Winter Soldier. Like, he announces his intentions to these people. And so then you see him going on like a little vendetta where he stops this corrupt, I think probably a senator, I'm not really sure.
Someone in the political role.
Yeah, a political person that he helped to get to power and has still been abusing her power since then. And so he stops them and is like, oh yes, and by the way, my name is James Bucky Barnes and I'm no longer and it's cute. It feels adorable. Like if this person was real and really wanted to kind of like make up for all the things he had done in his past, even though none of it was his choice. Mm-hmm. This feels like something that he would do.
It feels very AA to me.
Yeah, it definitely feels like one of the 12 steps.
Yeah, which I'm sure is what they modeled it after.
Yeah.
So that was adorable. I love that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we see
Sam has a great moment going back home with his family. They're somewhere in the Gulf Coast. I think New Orleans, but I don't think they ever really specifically said it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
They're catching fish on a boat, and he's trying to help his sister save the boat. And she's like, "You've been gone for 5 years. I've made all these choices. I've lived my life."
Yeah.
And so that's one of the great aspects where we haven't really seen anybody how they've experienced the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, we had a very short moment at Endgame with our heroes that they were all just trying to save their friends.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first experiences where we've talked to somebody who has really spent the last 5 years and what they've gone through, that they had to survive, And so Sam's back, and he's trying to make up for the last 5 years and help his sister save the boat, but he's not listening to her. Yeah. And she's like, I've moved on from this. And so he gets her to go to the bank, and that's one of the first experiences where he's treated in a way, and he even is kind of like posing, trying to be like, hey, I'm an Avenger.
Yeah.
And it's still not changing the end result. Like, even though the guy does recognize him, he wants to take a selfie, but he doesn't want to give him a loan.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I watched that scene and I was like, oh, okay, they're just using this opportunity to be more greedy and, deny anybody who doesn't have, $100 million in the bank. And it's interesting that even with, his history as an Avenger, his, government contracts, which I'm sure he's getting paid very well.
Yeah.
But that still wasn't enough assets for them to do a loan, which makes me wonder, how badly did the financial system crumble during the blip?
Yeah, it raises a lot of like social issues and like economic issues that you don't really think about. Because if half of the world disappeared, it's half of the people, and that's horrible. And you think more about like the families. But people buying stuff and people working places, and it wasn't split like if an office of 4 people. it wasn't two of them disappeared and the other two can still do the work. You know, it might have been entire industries. And it really makes you think about the impact of 4 billion people suddenly disappearing and then 5 years later suddenly reappearing exactly how we left them. And they kind of glossed over that with Avengers Endgame, but you had to.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to spend more time with the TV shows exploring all of the things that really were impacted by that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, and they make a point of this in episode 2. You know, you had all of these people that disappeared and things were better because a lot of the people that were in power, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, any organization that gets extremely large, that has a large amount of power, is very A, bureaucratic, and B, tends to be very rife with corruption. There's the right combination of words.
Like S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra.
Exactly. You know, and there's numerous, you know, instances of this. And, you know, you get to a certain level of you want more power, you want more money, and you don't want to give any of it up. And so, yeah, things may very well have been better during the blip because a lot of those people may have very well been gone, or at least enough that their stranglehold on the world was lessened.
And that's what we're getting into with the second episode. With this Flag Smasher organization, we start to learn more about them.
Yep.
And that's exactly what their whole idea is some things were better during the blip. Like, there was less of corruption, less fighting, less wars. Like, they make that a much more sympathetic cause than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of see, okay, well, they're not just bad guys because we needed a bad guy. Okay, maybe they kind of have a point. And same thing happens with U.S. agent, which I want to just keep calling him that. He was revealed at the very last moment of the first episode. And like, he turns around and you're like, oh, no, I don't want to see that.
Yeah, but he's also like, I don't know who designed the helmet or if they just like use the same model that they did for Cap, but it makes him look really dorky and it makes his ears stack out like
and I
really
think
bad.
That they wanted him to look goofy on purpose, because if it was just like a chiseled jawline Chris Evans type, then I don't think anybody would have been so far against him. But the whole bit of the character is that he is not Captain America, but he's a guy who patterned himself after Captain America. Yeah. But he's not the same guy. And we spend the beginning part of the second episode really learning his backstory. And he was, you know, top conditioning, a soldier. He has a lot of similarities to the Chris Evans, Steve Rogers Captain America. Yeah. But he's not superpowered. And well,
I suspect he is.
Technically. And one of the things that's quite jarring is he uses a gun.
Yeah.
So
well, Cap did too in in World War II.
But in most times that you see Captain, he's like punching or throwing his shield. In wartime, he was not very shy about killing the bad guy, but in his modern Avengers kind of thing, it was much more like, I'm just going to punch and you better stay down kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So they didn't really get into his back history a little bit, and I'll have to look at screenshots later of his uniform to see everything that he is. So in the comics, he has a history of enlisting and then going to OCS, which is Officers Candidate School. It's the military's version of becoming an officer if you don't go to one of the service academies or you don't do what they call Reserve Officer Training Cadet, ROTC, in college. my suspicion is that he's special forces.
Mhm.
So either he's a ranger that then went to either Green Berets or Delta Force, because his history and his medals, there's no way he could have done all of that in that short of time.
Yeah.
And we kick off episode 2 with him at some high school, which they came out to that field, and I was like, there's no way that's a high school unless they filmed it in Texas.
It definitely looked a lot more like a college marching band.
Well, yeah, it was definitely, and I'll admit, like, I'm pretty sure it was one of the bigger historically black college marching bands, because there's a couple of really famous ones. Yeah. And I didn't look to see which one it was, which is why it was such a misdirect, because everyone was like, oh, it's Falcon. Nope.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, like, I enjoyed it because I'm a marching band nerd. Like, that was my jam. But optically, it looked a little weird.
It did. And it also, I think, was playing into the fact that he is an awkward Captain America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The beginning of the second episode, he's like practicing saying good morning in a gym locker room. And a girl walks in and mentions that she remembered walking in before games when they were in high school. And then she says, I love you, darling. I think it might be his wife or fiance or something.
That would be my assumption. Yeah.
But yeah, the whole backstory for him makes him just feel awkward and clunky. And I think that's all on purpose. Yeah. Because you feel a lot of like mental instability from this character as the episode progresses. Yeah. And so what we've done here is Falcon voluntarily gave up the shield. He put it in a museum and he said, I'm going to be the Falcon because this is who I am. Mm-hmm. We don't need a Captain America. It'll be great. Steve was captain, Yep. Steve belongs in a museum. He's gone now. This is going to be the end. And they immediately turn around and make a new Captain America. And so as we're experiencing this episode, we're learning a little bit more about this guy. So you feel like, I see where we're going. Mm-hmm. And reading more about U.S. Agent, they're sticking so close to the comic book material. Yeah. It's pretty fantastic.
And even in the comics, like it very much was their, attempt to make a Cap and Bucky 2.0. Yeah. And they played very heavily into that on this episode. And it was kind of annoying to me a little bit. So I was like, no, there's one Cap and there's one Bucky.
Yeah, but that's exactly the point. Yeah. And I think that what they did was they took the first episode of this show and set it up as, Sam and Bucky are in very different places. They're very different people. Neither one can be Captain America. Yeah. And then they took the second episode and they gave them some kind of impetus that you really want them to say, okay, no, maybe we should pick up the shield. And so that's what we're doing. We finally get Sam and Bucky together. They go on an adventure. Like, Bucky kind of tags along at the last moment. He's like, well, to heck with this. I'm going with you. I'm going to help you stop these guys. And so we start getting the action of them together, and they have just the greatest kind of, I think you mentioned the Odd Couple. Mm-hmm. And it really is. They have so much back and forth, great banter, and they just don't fit together, but they kind of fit because of that throughout this episode. And you get the vibe that they're going to become a team and that somehow together they are going to, you want them to pick the shield back up themselves. Yeah.
And as we were getting into some of the John Walker stuff and stuff, I was like, there's no way he is not some super soldier experiment. Like, it was just like the footage they were showing. I was like, there's no way. And in the comics, he had some experimentation. I forget what it is off the top of my head. Superhero psycho. Exactly. Or superhero psych. Yeah. And actually, ironically, their Psych is one of my all-time favorite shows. There has been a lot of memes of, Bucky and Falcon kind of feel like Sean and Gus. So good. And it'll be interesting kind of going forward what they do. And there's several moments where like they're on a mission, they're fighting the bad guys, and US agent and I forget his partner's name, Haskins, I think it is.
Lamar. He goes by Battlestar.
Yeah. Thank you. They show up to save the day. And
yeah. So we're getting a little further into the episode. Bucky tags along on Sam's mission. So Sam goes in and he already has a sidekick of his own, which is his tiny little flying plane that he calls Red Wing.
I love Red Wing.
I love it because it's like half sidekick and half like puppy, Yeah. It's super cute and adorable. But he sends that ahead. And so Bucky's scouting and he's like, yeah, I see 2 guys. We can take them. And Sam keeps saying like, oh yeah, you see 2 guys? You see 2 guys? How many does Red Wing show you? And there's like 8 guys.
Yeah.
And then they see a hostage because they scanned the semi and they see a hostage. So they're going to run after him, but it's not a hostage.
No.
It is the same actress that played Enfys
Nest. This is how she'll be known from now on.
Yeah, she really will. Like, sorry, lady, but you are Enfys Nest. Her name is Erin Kellyman. She's a British actress. And so she does this creepy smile.
Oh, so
and then
weird.
Pulls out her Flag Smasher mask and kicks the crap out of Bucky.
Oh, yeah. Like, these guys
punches him into
powered.
another, like, semi. It was fantastic. Yeah. And then they have one of the biggest tropes. Whenever you have an action movie and somebody happens to be on, like, a speeding train, they're always going to have a fight on top of it.
Yup.
So this is a fight on top of 2 semis. And I'm like, in real life, how does anybody stay on top of that? That can't be safe.
It's not.
And then at that, if you were driving a semi and people were on the top of it fighting, wouldn't you pull over?
Yeah, seriously.
I love it. It's such a trope. And so they have this fight, and exactly what you mentioned happens. U.S. Agent Walker, Captain America. He's just going to be all of the adjectives.
It works.
He shows up.
I honestly refuse to call him Captain America.
Yeah. So Walker shows up. And he's like, I'm going to save the day. And he has his own Bucky, which in the comics, I've done research. It's Bold Urban Commando. And what the comic book version used them for is they would stage fights so that he could look like a superhero.
Yeah.
And this is the character named Lamar. And he takes on his own superhero name of Battlestar. So that's where we've been going with that, where he introduces himself as Battlestar. There's all of these characters so far are straight from the comics. And so they're going to join the fight, and they're all losing. They're getting their butts kicked by these super soldier Flag Smasher people. And they have one moment in there that I just loved the subversion of what I thought was going to happen. There's a sign coming up that they're about to drive underneath. And so Falcon flips over it and flies over it. He's like, oh, it's going to knock the bad guy off the back of the truck. And the bad guy just goes through it.
Yeah, it's so great.
That was so great. I did not expect that to happen. And that was probably my favorite moment of this episode, was just that. But the entire fight, you can tell that none of these guys can hold their own one-on-one with these guys. So it's going to have to be a team up. It's really setting up Sam and Bucky as being a partnership, that they need to fight together. And they end up walking down the street and trying to they're just frustrated with these 2 guys as taking on the mantle of Captain
Yeah.
America. And so they keep just like walking away from them. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, and we get into why it's so difficult for Bucky specifically a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, they keep trying to insert themselves into Falcon and Bucky because, you know, I think they suspect they can't do it without them.
Yeah.
You know, and at one point they're like, "How did you find us?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we hacked Red Wing."
Yeah.
What now?
Exactly. Like,
Excuse me?
That's not cool. That's not cool. So the next thing that we get is really quite an interesting scene that Bucky takes Sam to the house of Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also a character straight out of the comics, where it was a Black Captain America. It was a super soldier that I think the actual comic book version was World War II.
That makes sense. Because there was also that's where Nick Fury came out of. He was with the Heli Commandos.
But Bucky remembers him from the Korean War specifically, where this guy was dropped in to take care of Bucky back in his Hydra days. So there was kind of like a frenemy sort of vibe where obviously Bucky, as we know him, isn't going to be a threat against this guy, but the guy sees him as a threat.
Yeah.
And so Isaiah is an older man, and his grandson answered the door. His grandson is also a comic book hero. His name is Eli, and he goes by Patriot. So these are all people who have some form of super soldier type powers. And so this is building an idea in the universe that the government never stopped experimenting on people, never stopped trying to replicate Captain America. And so the Flag Smashers have superpowers. These two gentlemen have superpowers. And you're like, how many more people in this universe are going to have this? Like,
yeah, and they kind of teased this up a little bit in the Agent Carter show forever and a day ago when they had the last vial of Cap's blood.
Yes.
And she steals it back and throws it off the bridge, basically, you know, to exactly prevent this. And there is a thought that, you know, she may have been able to stop some of this, at least from a S.H.I.E.L.D. perspective, when she was in charge. But, you know, I'm sure everything ramped back up as soon as she was gone.
And Hydra had been doing their own experiments all along. You've got to imagine other government agencies, other countries. They all saw Captain America back in World War II, and they were like, hey, let's do that. So that's kind of the vibe, the world that we're building within this show, is that other people had been experimented on, and it looks like some of them have been against their will, really. Yeah. Isaiah mentioned that he was in prison for 30 years, and they kept studying him and doing experiments on him. And he's pretty traumatized by that. But it really is going to be interesting because that it's not a character I knew about. And Sam says the exact same thing when they go outside. And that gets to the confrontation with the police that you were talking about. Sam is mad because there's a Black superhero that he never heard about. And how could they keep it from him? How could we not know about this guy? What else are we hiding? That's what he's yelling at Bucky about. And Bucky's like, you know, I didn't tell Cap because I didn't want him to feel bad. I didn't want anybody to know. This guy's been through enough. So Bucky feels like he was trying to protect this guy. And Sam feels like he should have been told. And so the cops pull up because they see two guys yelling at each other, and they're immediately antagonistic against Sam. Yeah. And they're like, oh, Mr. White Guy, is he threatening you? And Bucky's like, no, this is fine. Like, go away. And then they finally recognize Sam as an Avenger. And then they're like, oh, hi, Mr. Avenger. So I asked a couple of friends of mine what they felt about the experience. And they were like, yeah, that seems very realistic to me. So I was like I'm trying to get my best friend to watch the show with me, and she's like, I will watch it sometime, but not right now. So I was like, yeah, I get that. Totally fine. But, the dogs are about to start barking. Spoiler warning, my dogs will bark because my husband's home with groceries. Thank you, Escape Podcast. They are addressing race in a way that is very realistic to the characters that they're portraying in this show. Yeah. And they're doing it in a way that I hope doesn't eliminate people who are afraid of those kinds of conversations. But I think it's going to be in a way that's more authentic than what they've been portraying in various forms of media. You know, if they just had a conversation in the middle of a street and cops came up and were antagonistic against both of them, I don't think that would have read as realistic to today's society as the way they did it. And at the same time, they still subverted expectations, because when they arrested somebody, it wasn't the angry black man. Yeah. It was the white guy with a warrant. And I'm kind of like, they're still telling the story in a way that's very real to the characters, because Sam as Falcon has dealt with issues throughout his life, both in the movie and in the comics. And the actor has dealt with issues in his life as being a black man in today's society. And I think they're going to tell this story in a way where they're talking about some of these issues, but not in a way where they're talking about it just to tell that. You know, it's not a feminist story because we want a feminist story and we're going to punch you down the face with it. It's not a race story because we want to tell a race story and we're going to punch you down the face with that. It's just authentic to these characters. And it's an authentic experience to the characters as they are in the comics and in the movies, and also to the people portraying them.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I'm all for having honest conversations about stuff. But generally I'm a show me facts, show me stats, show me, real data, and then we can have an honest conversation about that. I don't like the emotional argument because you can never win. It doesn't matter what side you're on.
People just get their dander up and then they want to fight.
Yeah, and not my thing.
But at the same time, one of the things that I like the best about movies like this is seeing a perspective portrayed on screen that is different than the one I grew up with.
Yeah.
Because, I am a white woman who grew up in Midwestern United States. I'm cis, I'm straight. I have a very particular perspective. And I like seeing stories that are things that I didn't experience. I like seeing things from people from other countries. I like seeing things from people with other identities. And all of that is a richer world experience, in my opinion. I don't need to see a Midwestern girl that reads a lot of books and likes dogs because that's my life, Like I don't always need to see myself portrayed in TV and film because I know what my experience is. There's something to be said for seeing something that's authentic to you. And then there's also something where you can enjoy a story that's completely different from what you've experienced.
Yeah. And I'm off, some of my favorite stuff has been overseas stuff or, just different perspectives and different people. And that's great. Everybody wants to see themselves on screen or in a book or in music, etc. Because that's, we're all individuals. That's what makes us us. And we should show that to everybody else in a way that feels real to you and also authentic to what your personality is and your traits. Unfortunately, we get a lot of exaggerations in every direction nowadays. And I'm all for the quiet realism. And then we move over into after Bucky's been arrested and basically Walker's like, so we can't have him tied up in court mandated therapy. So we're going to break his agreement. Yeah. Basically. And
Walker tries to bend all the rules. And his court-ordered therapist is like, oh, no. We're going to have a session right now.
No.
You and Falcon in my office, like an interrogation room.
Yeah, basically.
Seriously, probably my second favorite point of the episode. Because they just get awkward about it, and I love it.
Yeah, it's weird, and it's fantastic.
It's so
there's
weird
on
purpose.
Yeah, and there's a great moment where Bucky finally starts talking about what he's feeling about Cap's legacy, and he's like, if you gave it up because you didn't feel good enough, then he was wrong about you and he was wrong about me.
Yeah, it got real very fast.
Yes, it did. And I was like, oh, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Because at first they're just having like a staring contest, and she's like, get closer. And he's like, what, do you want to go on the inside or outside? Like, that's a conversation that I think they could really have.
Yeah.
Where if two guys had to sit that close together, they're going to, like, do you want to be the innie or the outie? Like, do you want to both left, both right? Like, where are they going to position their knees so they can be that close? And it just felt like unscripted, where they were just being awkward with each other and posturing. And the whole moment would just felt lighthearted and silly. And then it got immediately real, where this is a guy who the one thing he's been clinging on to throughout all of his post-brainwash days is that Cap believed in him.
Yeah. And
he's like, if Sam couldn't hold on to the shield and be Captain America, how can I believe in myself?
Yeah, exactly.
And Sam is like, you guys don't understand where I'm coming from. I did what I thought I had to do. Because Steve and Bucky were both born in the 40s, both white men, both lived a very different life than what Sam has lived. And so he's trying to say, I did this for me. I did this because I can't be Captain America.
Yeah.
And Bucky's just looking at it from his perspective, where I needed you to be Captain America because I need to be able to believe in myself too. Yeah. So it was a surprisingly powerful moment just dropped right in there that I didn't expect.
No, and I never actually expected, Bucky plays everything so close to the vest. I never actually, I knew that that's kind of where he was going, because, it's kind of written in everything and how he reacted to everything.
Yeah.
But for them to actually come out and say it was surprisingly intimate. And they kind of reacted in the typical guy fashion of, well, this is awkward. This is intimate. This is emotional. So I'm running away. Yeah.
And then they go out and we get Walker Cap again outside. Yeah. And this is where we really see, like, he seemed to have like a hero complex before, where he was practicing and there was just a moment of, I don't know, can I really be Captain America? But this is the first time where we start to see that he might not be 100% together. And he seems like confrontational and a little too angry. I feel like he was kind of like hair trigger, that sort of vibe. Yeah,
so, like, honestly, there's I can easily see him snapping. And, there's a moment where he's like, all right, if you're not going to work with me, then stay out of my way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I could see him killing them too if they got in his way. Like,
yeah. So I think that's where we're going to go with this story, because we know from the trailers that came out that eventually Falcon and Winter Soldier will pick up the shield and they'll be working together. I think that it's going to be something where Walker realizes, or he does something where he is not fit to wear the shield anymore. And he gives it up voluntarily to Sam, or they take it away from him. And I think that's what they're setting up. And there's a lot of history in the comics that support that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting going forward. And then, of course, we end the episode with them deciding to go see Zemo. Because he has all the information about the other Winter Soldiers. So
yeah, and honestly, like, I love the actor, but he was not well used in the film. And
too many
from
people.
what we've seen, from what we've seen in like the trailers and the teasing pictures and stuff, it looks like it's going to be a much better version of the character. Mm-hmm. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like he gets much more comic book accurate.
Yeah, 100%. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, that is Falcon and Winter Soldier for this week. Looking forward.
First couple episodes of that.
Yeah. We're already a third of the way through, which seems insane.
Yeah, it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah, it's only 6 episodes. Which is
it feels like we were spoiled now by WandaVision being
I know,
so
right?
Long.
But they're also, like 45-minute episodes. So I'm okay with that.
Yep, Maz Kanata only 6. It feels too 6. Short. But if you think about it, we're like that's a good length of a movie.
Yeah, and it's 2 movies put together, basically.
And I definitely think that where you could have made it into like an hour and a half, 2-hour long movie, and it would have been okay.
Yeah.
I still like the episodic feel of this because it feels like we're building in layers.
Yeah.
And so I think that having this on Disney Plus is the right call for it because I don't think that either Falcon or Winter Soldier are big enough draws for people where they would have wanted to go see it in the theaters.
Yeah.
But we're really telling the story in a way that fleshes out these characters. And so I think it's the perfect fit. It's a really fun take on some of these maybe B-level characters. And we're also getting some C-level sidekicks thrown in. Rhodey made an appearance. We know Sharon Carter is going to make an appearance. And it lets us have kind of like a richer tapestry.
Yeah.
Where if you tried to make just a normal Marvel movie out of it, I think it would have had to have a focus somewhere else,
Yeah. There's too many big names within the MCU, which is part of its strength, for it to just, focus on smaller characters.
Yeah.
Which is why Disney Plus is going to work so well.
Yeah. I think actually what the vibes are that it gives me is I think if Disney Plus had been an option, Black Widow would have been there too.
Yes.
Because I think that's one of the things we've been in post-production for so long with Black Widow and the release date keeps getting dragged out. I think if we had a TV show with her that was 6 episodes in the same format as Falcon Winter Soldier, I think it would have been released a year ago and done very well.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that because their contracts are so different between TV and film, and it was at that point, this is the big send off to Black Widow.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with waiting for a movie because it dang well better be worth it.
Yeah,
but
it better be. Yeah. But I think if Disney Plus had been a strong format before all of this came out, I think they would have chosen to go a different way. And maybe that they made Falcon and Winter Soldier the way they did because of all of the post-production problems they've been having getting Black Widow ready.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the characters are not too dissimilar. It has the same, like, they're not really superheroes vibe, where it's more the technology and the personality and the skills that they use versus actual, like, I become a Hulk monster kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And I think that they've chosen to do the right thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah. And I like it. I like it a lot. And this, being as good as it is, Disney Plus was really built on the back of The Mandalorian. And showing that you can do, small screen, long form storytelling effectively. And, I have a feeling, and I've been keeping an eye on all the award stuff because the Emmy nominations are coming up here in about 3 months. And that will be where we see how well received these Disney Plus shows are.
Yeah.
My suspicion is that WandaVision will be nominated for everything. The question of is, will it win? Because it does have to go up against things like The Queen's Gambit, which is very, very good.
That was a fantastic miniseries.
It was so good. I'm like, but why? Why does it have to be up against this? Like,
but it might not be, because you're also thinking about which year it was released. Queen's Gambit was definitely 2020, and WandaVision was pretty solidly in 21.
Yeah, but the way that they do it, it's like from July of 2020 to May of 2021. So it may have just fallen in that category.
Gotcha.
But it is the newer show, so that may, help. And I'm sure Disney is doing a very big awards campaign behind the scenes.
I expect that like WandaVision will probably get like a lot of technical awards because of the extreme detail that they put into set design, filming, wardrobe, all of that. And especially
my guess is
the theme songs. I expect them to get nominated for music. Yeah.
My guess is of the acting nominations, we'll probably get the big 3. Catherine Hahn is a lock. I want Elizabeth Olsen to win, but unfortunately she's going up against the Anna Taylor-Joy, who was very, very good and has already won a bunch. So maybe.
What I expect is that they'll actually get a lot of People's Choice nominations.
Yes. And I know
where they might not get a lot of Emmys. I think that the like the SAG Awards, the foreign awards, the kind of second tier of award shows, I expect them to get a lot of those.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I know that the DGAs, which are the Directors Guild Awards, are coming up in April. That'll be the first big test. If Max Shakeman wins for that, then we know that they've got a shot at least of winning something. It'll be a lot like The Mandalorian. Mandalorian was nominated for everything, but only won a couple outside of the technicals.
Yeah.
So,
as opposed to Falcon and Winter Soldier, whereas I like this, it's not as surprising of a show.
No.
It's the kind of thing that you would turn on the TV and expect to see. A little action-y, a little buddy cop-ish. I don't expect it to be like a huge award gatherer.
No, not at all.
But it's very enjoyable. If you have seen any of the Captain America movies and were like, yeah, I liked that, you'll say the same about this show. We're not surprised by anything here. Yeah. It might have little twists and turns, but really what I think it is a very well done Captain America movie in TV show format, focusing on Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So, like, while I like Falcon and Winter Soldier, like, WandaVision, Mandalorian, they are a class all to themselves.
They really are. Of they were surprising.
Execution and everything.
Yeah. So,
it'll be interesting. But I think that they intended to do that. So we'll see. We'll see going forward. I will be watching this very, very closely because I want them to win all of the awards, as indicated by my Porg. I am only slightly obsessed with the show.
Yeah.
But that is it for us this week. Catch us next week at our usual time at 4:00 Eastern.
Yeah.
Right here on Twitch.
We'll have all the news, all the recaps from shows this week.
Yep. Everything as in if it breaks, we will have it all. Hit that follow button if you don't already follow us on Twitch. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit a like. Give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app.
We talk about all the other stuff that we're doing. I play Dungeons and Dragons with RSG, and I design t-shirts and all of our merch. You'll be able to chat with us as we actually talk about these episodes each week while we're watching them. It's good times.
Sith Lord Aisha, thank you so much for the follow. I do appreciate it. But yeah, we will see you guys next week. All of the links and stuff are down below in the descriptions. This will be going up on YouTube tomorrow sometime after I get done editing, and then in audio version come Monday morning. So we will see you guys then. Have fun. Have a good week. Stay geeky. Wear your mask. Protect your family. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.